All right. Thank you, everybody, for coming. This is an SEG Geosociety event, and we are hosting Monica Guerrero of Hillcorp. She is going to talk about some of her career experiences and what it's like to work in the oil and gas industry. And she's just going to take it away.
All right, well, thank you guys for being here. I greatly appreciate it. Just a little bit about me. I graduated from U of H with a bachelor's in geology in 2019. In 2018, I began working as a geotechnical assistant here at Hillcorp, which is just a fancy way of saying I scanned and calibrated logs. I typed up core data. I did in-house research for reservoir engineers and geologists. And then in 2019, I moved departments to the geoscience technical group and became a petrophysical tech, where I build petrophysical models for Alaska and our lower 48 teams. And that's pretty much it. The way that I got here with a bachelor's is in 2018, I responded to a job posting at U of H looking for a scanner for a South Texas team. And that's pretty much how I got my foot in the door, which is, I think, really important in this industry. Quickly, I realized that this industry is all about who you know at different companies. And I also realized, being a single mom with 2 jobs, that I did not have the grades to get into grad school. So I realized that networking is the best way to get my name out there and to meet people. So I became the PR representative for the Wavelets in 2018 and 2019, and went to every single conference and happy hour and everything that was held. Mind you, I don't know anything about geophysics, so I would pick up on a couple things that people would say just to make conversation. But really, it was just about getting business cards and networking. And then those 2 years, I was also on the graduate student committee for Student Research Day. The first year was as a volunteer coordinator. And then the second year was what really helped me in this industry. I was a judge coordinator. So I reached out to everyone in the industry and asked them if they wanted to be a judge. At this time, I was still a scanner for South Texas, and I approached the chief geologist here at Hillcorp, asked him if he wanted to be a judge, and he said yes. And that really helped build that relationship with him. And so after that, I made a point to always run into him in the hallways and joke around with him, and just made sure that he knew that I was more than someone looking for a job. I wanted to be personable towards him, make him like me. And it worked out because he moved me into this position. I also, the team held a core day. So we were looking at core for South Texas, and I love stratigraphy. I was totally nerding out and answering some engineers' questions. And what I did not realize was that the petrophysicist was there, and he was impressed with what I was asking. He said that my answers were thoughtful. And he could tell that I was really excited about what I was doing. So that helped bring me into this team, because the position didn't exist before that. And so that was really, that's how I got to where I am. It was not so much luck. It was really about knowing how to play the game, knowing who to talk to, and I guess being passionate about the things that I like, and that showing through your job. In terms of how to be successful in the industry, just as I said, it's networking. I cannot stress enough how important that is. And I also know that memberships for a lot of these groups are really expensive. And as a student, it's hard to afford some of those, even at the student rate. So what I would do is I would stalk all these groups and figure out where they're going to happy hour and where they're holding meetings. And I would just show up and buy a drink at the bar and figure out who was there and talk to them. So I don't know if I'm supposed to say that, but that's how I did it. I met a lot of people. My second word of advice is getting your foot in the door. Being a scanner was not fabulous. I had to work 2 jobs because it did not pay well, but I knew that if I could get my foot in the door, that would be a really good start. So I would highly recommend working in records or doing clerical duty or working as a receptionist just to get your foot in the door to a company. And then figuring out who you need to know and who you need to talk to get to where you want to be. And talk to people like humans. Don't tell them all about yourself and your research. And of course, work that in. But if you can make someone laugh or leave a really good impression, they're more inclined to want to continue talking to you. And that's what happened with the chief geoscientist here. I would crack jokes with him. I knew where he bought coffee every morning, so I would go get coffee at the same time as him. It's really, I mean, again, that has to go back to networking. But this industry is very small. It is very big, but everyone knows someone in the industry. So always be on your best behavior, always. There's a lot of word of mouth. If you work with someone and things maybe don't go that great, the chances are the next job you apply for, someone knows somewhere where you've worked before, and they're going to call and ask about you. I've seen it plenty of times, and it never pans out well. With that, don't lie about the things that you know. Don't lie about having certain experiences or saying you know certain things, because everyone can spot a BSer. We see it all the time with interns that have come in here. They say that they have experience doing this, and they get put in that position, and it turns out they have no idea what they're doing. And there's a difference between embellishment and just saying that you know something when you don't. You can say, yeah, I don't know how to do that, but I'll figure it out. People love go to like those attitudes, but don't say you know something if you don't. But also make yourself really valuable. Learn a new trait, learn a software program, write workflows, implement them, and teach people everything that you know. Because with that, you make yourself valuable, which is how I've maintained a job during COVID. I wrote workflows for petrophysical softwares that we use, and then taught them to every person on a team. And so when COVID hit, I did not lose my job because they needed me to continue teaching these programs. So it was really, really important to show people that I can learn something and to teach someone. If you learn something and you use it yourself and you show a presentation, great, but you haven't really helped the company as a whole by not showing other people. And define what success means to you. Some people want to work 9-to-5 jobs and have a stable job and make a certain amount of money. This is not a stable industry. And Sharon, I think you just touched on that earlier before we started. It's cyclic. There are downturns, and even when gas and oil is good, you can work for a certain field and it gets acquired like the next day. So 5-year plans don't really pan out very well here. Tend to make like 6-month plans. That's much better. Also figure out what it is that you want to do. There's a lot of different things to do in this industry. Everyone obviously wants to be a geophysicist or a geologist, but maybe you're really great with people, and sales for CGG or different software companies is your thing. Most of these people have geology degrees. Almost all of them do. There's a lot of different ways to get into this industry. It's not just working for Shell or Oxy or any of these companies. And I think figure out what kind of company you want to work for as well. Why everyone always wants to work for a really big company, but why? Is it name recognition? There's a big difference between working between a big Shell, Motiva, BP, Conoco company, as opposed to working for Hillcorp or EOG or Diamondback. Those companies are great for training because they train their participants the first 2 to 5 years. Whereas when you work for a small company, you are thrown into a project and expected to learn everything immediately. They don't expect you to know everything. They expect you to be self-taught, which is great for school because that's exactly what school is pretty much all self-taught.
I noticed you said that earlier, that you kind of got thrown into it with the petroleum engineer intern.
Yeah.
You had to figure it out.
Yeah, yeah, and that's, I mean, school is to teach you your fundamentals, but working is really how you learn how to do your job. Um, so there's a there's a huge learning curve, and when you first get in the industry, they know that. They know that, okay, this person's coming straight from school. They don't know how to do this stuff, but they expect you to figure it out. That's expected. Um, and it's an industry that you're working 10 to 12 hours a day. It is not a 9 to 5 job. You do have those times occasionally, but if that's something you're interested in, maybe sales is better for you. There are different areas in the industry that do have those hours, but working as a geologist in the oil and gas industry is not one of them. So it is, yeah, I mean, you have to figure out what you want to do. And of course, you don't figure it out until you start doing it and you start exploring. That's why I think a lot of people, especially undergrads, which is hard because it's a heavy load at U of H, but get your foot in the door. Like I said, it doesn't have to be in the geology department. Do something that works with your schedule, whether that be working in the records department or as a receptionist, and talk to people and figure out what it is that they do. I never, ever thought I would be doing petrophysics, ever. Like, I did not understand that in structure. Like, that was way over my head. And all of it I've had to learn on my own. I mean, I have a mentor, but I've had to read a lot and figure it out. And it just, because I have that basic fundamentals in school, it clicks more now. So, does anyone have any questions?
Yes, I do, if that's all right.
Yeah.
I have several. Okay, so you mentioned that you created this thoughtful conversation that really helped with your initial networking. I was wondering what was that conversation like? What are some tools that maybe an undergraduate coming out could use to help with that conversation, to help build that type of conversation?
So you were
sort of
breaking up.
Oh, sorry.
No, that's okay. My conversation with
your chief geoscientist. I think he was wondering
Yeah.
what kind of tools
Yeah.
could he think about using as an undergrad.
I think I mean, in terms of like getting those conversations started with people.
Well, I've had a couple opportunities and I've sort of failed at it. So I was wondering, I mean, what are some tips to make that conversation, I guess, happen more apparent?
I think being really personable, not overbearing. I think it's really common to get the advice like, talk about your research, talk about what you do, talk about you. These people hear about that all the time. Recruiters and like the chief geoscientist, he hears about people that want jobs all the time. He knew that I wanted a job. I didn't have to tell him that. I would just ask him what he's working on. And like I said, I figured out where he got coffee. So, and I love coffee. So I would have that conversation with him. I did the field camp at Red Lodge and he had gone there for a conference. So we had that in common. Really, everyone has the ability to stalk people through social media. And I would highly recommend doing that. Figure out what they do for hobbies, figure out what they like doing, where do they like to eat, show up at those places. I mean, it sounds creepy, but if they're consistently seeing you, then they're more inclined to talk to you. And I'm pretty outgoing. I'll talk to anyone. So I would just start a conversation with him. I mean, whether it's, oh gosh, it's so hot outside, that's an easy conversation starter.
It sounds like bouncing back off of their interest is really important.
Oh, absolutely.
Finding that common ground.
Yeah, absolutely. It's humanize yourself as something more than someone looking for a job and, oh, I know how to do this. Sure, you know how to do it, but when you get to your job, you have no idea what you're doing. So, and they know that. Yeah, it's not a constant sales pitch. And they know that. They go out, they recruit, they know the whole spiel. So just, yeah, just try to like, almost like you're trying to make friends. That would be my suggestion. I talk to our president all the time, like when I see him. I know a lot of people will try to avoid him because they don't want that conversation, but I don't know. I'll talk to anyone.
You mentioned, or sorry, Dad, you mentioned an initial clerical job that you were working on. I was wondering, the first initial clerical job.
Oh no, so I was a assistant geotech here. So I was just scanning logs.
Okay.
While I was in school. So that only introduced me to the geos on my team who had no interest in talking to me. I just scanned logs for them and typed up core data. And I did this in between classes and after school and before school. It was really about me figuring out how can I get my foot in the door? Who's going to hire me? Who's going to be interested in me? Because it wasn't the team I was working for. But I knew that I had opportunity here.
Okay. I didn't mean to hog your question.
No, that's okay.
I have 3 questions.
Yeah.
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Okay. So I like what you said about place a foot in the door. However, I have tried to do that, but then it's been very difficult because then they say that I'm overqualified, the famous word. What can I do with that word? Should I hide my PhD? Should I hide what? My CV? How can I get a lower position if I am in studying in graduate school?
Yeah, that is unfortunate. That does happen. That's really that's a tough question. I think you just have to be eager to take on whatever you want. And sometimes taking some stuff off your resume is what you have to do. I have management experience in an office, but I'm not going to put that on my resume, even though that would do well here, because they're not going to value that, because I only have a bachelor's. So I hide all of that.
Is that legal? I don't know.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. There's nothing illegal about that. People lie on their resumes all the time and say they can do stuff or they've had positions and they have not. That's very common. I think, yeah, that's a really tough question. There are certain companies that will not hire people with PhDs because they're small companies, and they don't want to pay. I think having a PhD probably works better in a large company. Unfortunately, those companies are really hard to get into. And then they only recruit from certain schools. I think I would just tell people what you want them to know. I mean, having a PhD is something definitely to be proud of. But at the same time, if you're trying to get your foot in the door, I would say, oh yeah, I'm a grad student, just trying to get my foot in the door. I just want to work here and, whatever.
No, but I am a graduate student and I have tried, and they say, even though I don't have the degree yet, it's like, I'm going to get it any moment, so I'm going to leave. I mean, I understand why they say that, why they don't want to hire. They don't want to hire someone in a grad school. But
Yeah.
I really don't know if I can hide that I'm doing a grad school.
Yeah. I mean, but yeah, I'm not sure I can answer that question then. I don't.
Okay, next question.
I'm sorry.
It's okay. What do you see in the company that you are? I mean, what exactly could make you focus only in that company?
On this company? I love the company that I work for. My values align with their values. Any job I've ever had, I have taken the job very personal, whether that's retail or I've done custom art framing. I treat a company like it's my own. I work like I own a company. And these are values that align with the company values. I work really long hours and hard, and if something can be done today, why would I wait till tomorrow to do it? And it's a company that is really big on ownership. So it's, yeah, I mean, that's really it. I work like I own this company because if the company's not successful, then I'm not successful. We've seen a lot of small companies get acquired by bigger ones, and it has nothing to do with success. It just, well, it does a little bit. But it's really, to me, it's just the way that I work aligns with how the company works. I like starting a project and following through until it finishes. Whereas larger companies, you tend to start you start a project, or maybe you come in a project in the middle, or you're at the very end, but it's not very often that you start and end a well or a field study. It tends to be many years for something like that to happen at a larger company.
Okay, last question. So changing topics, now this question is about geoscience education. Would you have appreciated if you would have taken more specialized courses during your undergrads?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I wish I had taken a petroleum geology course, but it was a graduate course that you have to petition for, and I couldn't get into it because I didn't have good grades. So yeah, that would be great for those courses to be offered more for undergrads, but I didn't have that opportunity. However, the undergrad programs at U of H, the courses that we take far exceed many people that I work with and the programs that they've gone through. I don't know if you did your undergrad at U of H, but it is very field heavy. And a lot of these people have been in the field for like one class, whereas we were in the field for 4 classes. And we did 4 different petrology courses, whereas many people did 1 course. Yeah, U of H definitely sets up undergrads for a really great fun, like foundation. But I do wish that I had more classes to choose from in terms of like my electives and stuff, because it was not very many.
Yeah, but you already had a very busy curriculum. How would you fit more classes?
Well, you still have to take electives as a like in your program. So I wish that as an undergrad, I had a larger variety of electives to help set me up in oil and gas. Prior to this, I had only seen a well log one time for 1 lab, and that's it. I had no idea what a well log was until I started scanning them. And I was working with someone who was doing the professional masters at U of H and had experience as a mud logger. And so we shared an office while we were doing this. And so he went over and taught me everything about well logs and what I was looking at in scales and understanding this stuff. Whereas I never got that experience as an undergrad.
Thanks.
Mm-hmm.
What about software? Did you have any learning curves on software that you had to learn?
Yeah, I taught myself Patrol last summer. Yeah. Yeah, so here I use Patrol, Petra, integrated petrophysics, and a software that just came out 2 years ago called Dynamics. It's a cloud-based petrophysical software that's really, really awesome. But as I was learning these programs, I was writing down my steps and taking screenshots of them. And so off of that, I implemented these workflows, and now they're on our company website so people can download them and do that. And they're really dumbed down. That was for me, but I always get complimented on them because that's what they need. So, well, I think they need it. So
That's great to hear. That's great to hear.
Yeah, and that goes back to making yourself valuable. Is I learned these programs by myself and made these workflows. So therefore, when someone was learning how to do them, or I showed them in a presentation, and they said, "Well, I don't know how to use this. I don't understand how you did this, I could then sit down with them in their office for an hour or two and show them this. And so I spent a lot of time doing that during COVID at work, teaching people petrophysical software. So, yeah.
Well, I'll take the helm for a couple more questions, if that's all right.
Of course.
So you know, you sort of opened my eyes to intermediate companies, but one thing, you know, I sort of heard, and I've sort of liked the idea of in these large companies is teamwork. You know, you do develop a product, it takes longer, but you're doing it in a team-based environment. Do you think that applies to those intermediate companies as well, in your experience?
Teamwork? Is that?
Yes.
Oh, absolutely. A geologist does not work by themselves. They work with a reservoir engineer. There's a geologist is not, designing a well and, you know, drilling it or perforating it or whatever the case may be. No, absolutely. A geologist at a company figures out the geology of it, makes maps, and then gives it to an engineer. An engineer runs the numbers, figures out how economic it is, and then gives it back to the geologist and says, this isn't going to work, do this. You're not doing anything by yourself. You may work with one other teammate, or you may work with several people, but in terms of like bringing in the geochemist or the petrophysicist or the chief geo to get advice, or someone that has worked the field before you where maybe you're new or you have questions or you're unsure about something. But it's always a team of two. Definitely, you're not doing this by yourself. And it's really rewarding to see a project and build it from the ground up and see it finished. That's always really neat. So.
Okay. And so you also mentioned plans regarding, you know, preparing for the different financial cycles. Could you elaborate on that? What do you mean? How do you plan for that? Do you have any tips?
Sharon, I would love for you to chime in at any of this.
Actually, yes.
Okay, having been through 4 cycles and I'm still standing. What I would, you know, the first time or two, it's a shock because you know, you're going along and you're raking in all this money. Life is great. You've got a new car, you've got a house, a swimming pool, blah, blah, blah. And then all of a sudden, bam, you're worrying about how you're going to make your next house payment because the price of oil dropped through the bottom.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it happens, and it happens over and over again. It's a cyclic, it's just something that goes with the industry. And so what I have learned is that when times are good and I'm making big bucks, you know, I'm stashing as much of it into savings or investments as I can, because I know history has taught me that it's just a matter of time until it happens again. And so you need to have that cash cushion to get you through that rough patch so you can survive until the next time industry's up and, you know, going again. And look at the price of oil now compared to what it was a year ago. You know, and I had people that were ready to go commit suicide. And I said, look, people, you know, I've been there. I've been through all of that. Just sit still. Don't sell your stock. You know, hang on to it. It may be with $10, you know, a share now, but it'll be back to whatever it was. And it probably will exceed that point. But you have to be patient and you have to wait. And you have to prepare for these events because it just is part of the territory. You know, if you're going to be in the oil business, this is how it goes. You know, it's feast or famine. It's never just so-so. It's either one or the other. And you don't get a whole lot of notice when it's going bad. You know, it can happen very quickly in a few weeks. And so you just have to kind of be prepared and not spend everything that you make when you're making big bucks.
Yeah.
You know, try to prepare and, you know, make house payments ahead, pay off your car, you know, all the things that you can do ahead of time to get ready for in case there is a crash that you'll get through it and not end up homeless.
Yeah, I mean, you're absolutely correct. I mean, and also, even when, I don't know a better way to say this, but every geologist has a shelf life at a company. I mean, when you look at people's LinkedIn, you can see 10-year career, and they've worked for 5 or 6 different companies. Companies
yeah.
get acquired, acquisitions get bought, the price of oil drops, or they want new young blood. It's part of the deal.
Well, the thing of it is as your salary keeps increasing, they keep increasing to a point, and then they reach a point saying, okay, this person's been with the company X years, they've got this degree, we're paying them this much. We can get a fresh new one right out of school for half that amount.
Absolutely correct.
And
Absolutely correct.
And so you also have to keep that in your mind, is that there's a danger to being, unless you want to go into management where you can maintain the salary and justify it. But if you don't go into management, it's hard to maintain that level of salary over a long period of time as a technical person. And you need to try to decide what, you know, after 5 or 6 years in being in industry, when you just start out, you need to make that decision. Do I want to go for management, or do I want to be technical? Now, I got trapped early into being management. And I think it was because I was female, it was novelty, you know, and it looked good for them and to say, hey, we have a female, you know, that's doing such and such. But what happened being in management for a period of time is I became technically antiquated, you know, because I wasn't sitting at the workstation doing the same thing my people were. I wasn't doing the actual work. I was managing people, I was managing budgets, I was managing projects, which is all good and it pays well. But you pay a price for that. You give up your technical expertise because over time, you're becoming technically antiquated. You know, the last software that you learned, and well, guess what? There's 3 new versions now.
Not just that, there's new software to always keep up with. And it's
That's right.
so important to, if you work with a company that has classes on it through Nautilus, take them if given the opportunity. I mean, always stay up to date on software. It is so important.
Oh, it's, you know, if you're going to be doing the technical work or managing a team that does, you know, very detailed technical work, you have to.
Yeah.
You have to. Anyway, that was part of my decision to go back to school at a late point in life for a PhD in geophysics, is because I just made that, I was working for Paradigm. I was their operations manager, a geophysical software company. It's now Emerson, but it was Paradigm. And I was managing a technical team of about 12 people. And what we would do, clients would have us solve problems that they didn't have the resources for. They didn't have the people, or they didn't have the time, or they just didn't know how to do it. So we'd solve whatever their technical problem was using our software, and then hopefully they'd end up buying the software. But we got paid big bucks for solving whatever their problem was. Anyway, it was fun. But then Paradigm decided they were going to go public. And that's very hard for a geophysical company, because you're only as good as your last software version. So your product has about a 6-month shelf life. So you're constantly having to upgrade and do research. So all your money is going into research and new software development, and you're not setting aside assets. And the SEC requires that if you go public, you have to have so much money set aside just as assets, and they never could get there. So they made this brilliant decision that they just lay off about half of us, cut their costs to save that money. So they did, and guess what? They ended up losing the whole company. Anyway, but make a long story short, at that point, I took an evaluation and decided, okay, Sharon, you've played this management game long enough. It's been a fun ride, but you really need to get yourself back in school. You need to get technically up to date, you know the latest and greatest, and that you know all the versions of whatever software is useful. So that's what I did. So
yeah, I mean, that's how it is. It's, if you work for a smaller company, try to get training through Nautilus or subsurface consulting. And these are things that you'll learn about, or just, I mean, look them up, add them on LinkedIn, look at what classes they're offering. They are very expensive, and that's why you want to do it through a company. Right. But it is well worth it to stay up to date, because those that don't fall behind and tend to get let go. We're not mapping by hand anymore. We're not doing any of that. Everything is digital. And if you can't continuously update your knowledge, then it's kind of like a sink or swim kind of deal. And it's hard because you are given projects and you're given a timeline. And on top of that, there's been 2 new updates that IT all of a sudden just did. And you're like, crap, now I have to learn the software and finish this deadline. It's tough. It's a very, very cutthroat industry. And it is just like U of H, it's sink or swim. I mean, it really is.
When you were an undergrad at U of H, did you go to any of the career fair stuff or anything like that?
I watched through them, but no, not really. I was already working 2 different jobs. I was a custom framer at Michael's, and then I worked for a small art studio doing custom framing. And then when I started working here, I dropped one of those jobs. I'm still working 2 jobs. And they want someone with a really great grade point average, and it's going to go get their master's, and I didn't have that. So I was I knew how to play the game well enough where I could get myself in, but I knew I wasn't ever going to be hired at a big company. That's not my plan. So. Does anyone have any other questions?
No, I was just checking the chat.
Well, I don't know how inspirational this was, but it sounds like you guys have a fantastic resource, Sharon, on campus.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah.
That's really nice of you. I learned a lot there.
Good. Yeah, I mean, I would just, for anyone, again, if you can't get your foot in the door because you're overqualified, which is a really big bummer, but does happen, or because you're underqualified, or because your schedule doesn't work because of school, just network. I cannot tell you how many people I know at how many different companies that I still continue to stay in contact with, even TAs that work at different companies. I always stay in contact with them because, again, my shelf life will expire here. One day I will be looking for a job. So I always stay in contact with them. And there's really no way to beat around the bush than to ask, hey, are you guys hiring? This is my experience. Here's my resume. Do you know of anyone that needs, if I were looking for a job, a tech, this is what I know how to do. These are the areas that I've worked. There really is no shame in that. Everyone has to do it at some point.
I would suggest that you go to as many technical conventions, AAPG, SEG, GSA, whatever, that you go to as many as you possibly can. And if the opportunity for you to present, either to give a poster session or to give a talk, that's the way to meet people and to showcase what you can do, but not in an ostentatious way. You're just one there of, hundreds of people giving a talk or showing a poster, what have you. But you'll meet people. I think I kept going to giving talks at SEG, probably for the last 10 years. And I kept bumping into this person named Maurice Nessum. And we'd see each other at these meetings and just say hi and what have you. Well, it turns out he was president of Western GECO. And then he was president of SEG. And it turned into me being a consultant for Schlumberger in teaching field development classes at Schlumberger.
Wow.
And so you just never know, because just seeing him year after year, I had no clue who he was or whatever. But you just never know who you're going to meet and what it'll turn out to be.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, with that, if you aren't doing research and you don't have something to present, or you can't afford to go to these things, they always have happy hours afterwards that you don't have to pay for. Show up and buy a beer and sip on it for an hour and just talk to people. They're always blasting these things on social media. There's some group that's always putting together something after a convention. Stand outside the convention and talk to people, go to wherever they're eating, go get coffee. I mean, I cannot
At the
tell you.
taxi stand.
Yeah, I mean, it really does help. I mean, if you I know there's different companies out there where you can do like 50 free business cards, do so. And join an organization at school and put that on your business card. Being the judge coordinator for Student Research Day was huge. That's what really locked me in here, was getting our chief geo. And I mean, he made a point, I'm not going to recruit from the school. And I was like, I don't care. Like, I just trying to find a common ground with you. That's it. Yeah, I mean, get out there.
Something else, did you have a business card? Did you have a U of H business card?
I did, yes. I made
That's something that Dr. Mann insists we all have U of H business cards when we go to these meetings, so that we can, you know, we can exchange business cards with people, and
yeah,
we get to know them and they get to know us.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, I didn't work under him, but I made my own, and I wrote PR rep for SEG Wavelets. But I was also attending a lot of different conference on their behalf. And yeah, I think I still have some. Yeah, and you can get them for free. There's a lot of websites where like 51st, you know, business cards free for $3 shipping or whatever.
Well, they're fairly inexpensive.
Yeah,
I got mine online, and I think I got 500 for $20 or something.
Yeah, ask for them for Christmas. I mean, it's not a lot, but it's, as an undergrad student, chances are you probably don't have that much money if you're not working, like if you're not doing research and bringing money in.
No, but I think it gives you some sense of legitimacy.
Yes,
You've got a U of H business card, so it's not like you're just somebody off the streets.
Yeah, definitely. I agree. Does anybody have any other questions?
Well, thank you so much for your time.
No, thank you, Sharon, for chiming in. I appreciate it.
Let's see, can I think of anything else?
If you have time later, would it be all right if I reach out to you, Monica, through like an
Yeah.
email or something? That'd be great.
Absolutely. Yeah, you can add me on LinkedIn.
Perfect.
I roll over in the morning and check everything. So yeah, and I still to this day keep in touch with contacts, be it Merry Christmas or whatever. I will respond. And that's something that's really important in this industry. Do not just blow anyone off.
Yes.
So.
Thank you. Thank you. And thank you for your time today.
Of course. I hope you guys got something useful out of what I said. So
all information is useful at one point in life or another.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, thanks guys for having me. I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much for your time.
Yes, thank you for coming. And thank everybody for coming. This was great.
Thanks, guys.
All right, then I guess we'll call it off and have a good evening.
All right. Thank you.
Bye.
Hey, everyone. Bye-bye. See you.
Thank you guys.
See ya. Bye.